What's up, everybody, and welcome to PPR Podcast number 126, the Week 7 recap and Week 8 preview show brought to you by the San Diego Strike Force. As always, I'm Chase Izidoro, and today we're joined by the East County Game of the Week reporter, Allison Edmonds. Allison, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
I know, it's flying by so far this season. Already 7 weeks through.
Isn't that crazy?
Getting on to Week 8. I mean, we're almost going to start getting ready for the gala here.
I know. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, oh, it's, 60 days away. It's no big deal. Better start planning. It's fun. So it's exciting for everyone. So, yeah.
And an exciting week in Game 7 as well, as some great games. It almost works out perfectly that you're here because we get to cover a couple of East County games with you because you get to see them yourself. But let's start off with the game of the week.
Yes.
Carlsbad moving to 6-0 with their 35-14 win over Mission Hills. Mission Hills dropping now to 4-2. Really close contest going into that first half. A huge play by Julian Sayin at halftime to take the lead, but then Carlsbad pulls away late in that game. Sayin 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. The wide receiver weapons for Carlsbad is when we start thinking about, all right, are they the top team in this county? It's going to come down to what do you have compared to Lincoln? And when you look at these guys like Ball, Sanfrini, Rosenblum, St. Paul, I mean, they have so many guys that it's so hard to cover all of them.
Yeah, there's so much depth on that team. And I think that that's where it's scary because you're like, I can't prepare for just Sanfrini or Ball or Rosenblum. You have to prepare for all of them and what they're all capable of. So I shout out to Mission Hills, though, for putting up a fight for a long time in that one. It was exciting for a while. So.
And I think that's what we expect from an Avocado League matchup.
Yes.
Great defense on both sides of the ball, but it was Carlsbad's defense that made the huge adjustments in that second half. I'm starting to like what I'm seeing, though, from Troy Hune. I think he's starting to, grow into his own, obviously taking over the starter job at the start of the season. Huge game against Carlsbad, and he was right there with them. But still, Carlsbad proving to be that top team in that league. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And also, going off of Hune, I was watching stuff the other day when we were getting ready for that game from him, and that first game against Granite Hills, that first Saturday game, and to watch his progression from that Granite Hills team to now in just 7 weeks, it's exciting because he's still young, too, this year. So exciting to see how he's grown already and how he continued to grow. But Carlsbad, I think Carlsbad is the best right now for a lot of reasons. But they are dominating, and they continue to show how powerful and dominating they are. So. And
also a cool story now is, we were so concerned of what's going to happen to Keaton Smith because last year he proved to be really good. They almost won the D1 title, and then in his senior year having to be the backup quarterback. Now he's becoming one of the top targets for them on the outside, a wide receiver. Shout out to him because that's a very tough thing to switch to wide receiver in your senior year. But, I still expect big things from Mission Hills. I was a little bit worried about them, Obviously, that game against Granite's a great team, but it's, there's times where they look like, okay, I could see why everyone is scared of this team at times.
Oh, for
but there's other times where it's it's not all clicking. It's starting to click.
Yeah.
It's going to have to see. We'll get more into them as they have another huge matchup coming in this week. But now let's get on to the game that you got to cover.
Yeah.
Granite Hills moving to 6-0. For them to get the open division, they have to run the table, so every game matters. But a huge performance against a very good Santana team this season.
Yeah.
What was your kind of big takeaway from watching them live?
They are just pretty unstoppable offensively and defensively. I mean, their line is one of the biggest lines I've seen in this county. And I mean, Santana, they would get the ball, run the ball, and get immediately stuffed. It was crazy. Zach Benitez, first time I've gotten to see him in person, so impressive. The fact that he's a freshman is absolutely blows my mind. He's just so poised, so together, and I think that's really what's helped lead this team because they do have so many young guys. Pablo Jackson, Maxwell Turner, all those guys are not even seniors yet, so he's doing a really good job at leading a team at such a young age, and it's been really, really fun to watch. It was fun to watch last week, and I'm excited to see where they go. I mean, they are making their bid, in my mind as being one of the top 3 teams in the county easily, and it'll be exciting to see them hopefully maybe go to that open championship at the end of the year. So.
And what's crazy about having a freshman having to take over, especially what we saw from how important Parlon was and Tomasello was last year for these guys. Such a huge role for him to step into, and Zach has taken it perfectly almost. At the beginning they made everything easy. They wanted it to be short, not having him test the deep coverage. But now we're seeing him go deep on balls, great passes into the end zone. I mean, it's hard to look at a freshman and say, okay, you go up against Carlsbad or you go up against Lincoln, but that's what's starting to come into his path now.
Yeah.
Obviously, the great game that you'll be probably seeing, probably be game of the week.
Yeah.
That's the worst part about the East County.
Probably will be game of the week.
You've been waiting so long to see
So
Helix,
long.
and then it's the great game that Helix gets. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, it's game of the week.
No, exactly. Both all these teams, they're all these good East County teams this year, and it's just like, oh well, it's the best game in the county. Which who knew? But it's awesome to see. So yeah.
But that Helix Granite Hills game will be just, forget game of the week, that might be game of the year, especially after how it ended last year with the quadruple overtime game.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of a quadruple overtime
I was
game,
gonna say.
we have another great game, one that arguably could have been the game of the week with Nick Barnett going up against Eric Weddle, two Super Bowl winning players, now coaches in this county for the first time. Del Norte comes out on top in quadruple overtime, 49-43. Del Norte's moved to 5-1 on the season now.
Wow.
Rancho Bernardo, they're 3-3, but they are frustrating to play.
Yeah.
Every time I watch them play, I'd look at their tape and I'm like, man, I would not want to play these guys because they are just physical and they keep in every ball game they're in. Del Norte, Christopher Guzman, 13 carries, 177 yards. Jack Schneider, another great outing, 125 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ty Olson, 7 catches for 97 yards, catching the game-winning touchdown. But it was only the game winner because Charlie Bowers gets the game-winning interception in quadruple overtime. A moment not only he will remember forever, but I know all his teammates will. Just to reminisce a little, this is how much it mattered to me. When I was a freshman, playing freshman football at Cathedral. They have Team Red and Team Gold because there's too many players. All the great players go to Team Red, and Team Gold is just, the guys that get there for the PE credit. And I don't remember what our record was for Team Red, but Team Gold had not won a game. They had lost to every single game, and Team Red was on the JV and varsity schedule, so it was our bye week. So they sent down a couple of the guys from Team Red to Team Gold to try to go win the game. And it was like on a Friday night, which is crazy because we don't play night games as like freshmen. So it was a night game, and it was on our stadium, and there was a bunch of people there because there was no varsity game, and it came down to like a goal line stand, and I was on the field, and we won on like a pass breakup, and the entire team rushed the field. And I have remembered that moment being on the field
however many years.
And that was freshman football.
That was a long time ago.
I have great varsity moments, so I could only imagine what it was like for quadruple overtime in a year where you're playing now for your Super Bowl winning head coach. I mean, that's such a great moment for him. I can't imagine.
It's got to be incredible. And also, it was just this game in general was just going into it. Everyone was excited. It was the talk of the town. I know, like, all the San Diego stations were there. Everyone was making a huge deal of it. Like, wow, these two former NFL coaches going head-to-head in this football matchup. I was expecting it to be exciting. I was not expecting it to be necessarily quadruple overtime exciting, but those are games, I mean, like that Granite Helix game. It's a game that people are still talking about to this day. Every time you go to a Granite Helix game, I was like, can you believe that quadruple overtime game? And so these kids will remember forever. It's super awesome that that's how it got to happen in front of all the biggest stage, so it's cool.
And then, like you said, all the stations were there, which is crazy at Del Norte.
Right?
Where all the stations are showing up. I mean, it just speaks to what both those coaches have done now. Obviously who they are as former NFL players, but what they're done with their programs. I mean, we can hear from Nick Barnett, who we caught up with after the game.
I mean, it was classic, right? That's a high school Friday night classic game. We built it up, and it wasn't about building it up. It really was just bringing attention to high school football, man. And Poway Unified District. We got some good football out here, and we want people to come and show us San Diego football's on the map, man. We got some great players, great people in the pros, great coaches, great players, great schools. So we're excited, man.
And he's absolutely right. San Diego football is growing, and it just shows from these programs. Kind of, RB probably has a lot more history than the Del Norte, but still, they're now making a name for themselves. We can talk about Mount Miguel. Now they finally have their first winning season in 10 years, getting the victory this past weekend. It's so incredible to see, and it just makes me so happy that there's so many new storylines and so many new kids are getting the opportunity to play for a great program. I love it. One more quick note. Rancho Bernardo's Tarek Fisher, Rancho Bernardo lost the game, but he put the team on his back. 29 carries, 250 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Shout out to him, but just a phenomenal game all around.
That's incredible. That's a good job on both those teams. That's
Don't you just
cool.
love when it plays out that way? When we're like, oh, this should be a great game. Sometimes it's like that, and then it's not. But then when it exceeds our expectations, it's all the best.
Yeah, you always expect. Sometimes you're like, oh, it's going to be great, and then it ends up being a blowout one way or the other because the teams are expecting it. But when it actually turns out just Awesome. Great stuff.
Well, now let's get into our top 9. We'll be
Yay.
revealing it as a unit for the station tomorrow. But for myself, I have Lincoln still at number 1 at 7-0. Incredible performance yet again. Dominant on both sides of the ball. Keely Smith Jr., even though he got picked off twice by Jalen Brown, still 22 of 29 for 331 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown going to Drayden Gardner, 8 catches for 158 yards.
So
they
impressive.
look phenomenal. The speed, I say it every week, but the speed is the big difference maker. And as why I have Carlsbad at number 2. They're still a dominant team in this county. But I still think Lincoln just edges them a little bit at this point. I still have Granite at 3 over Helix, but I'm going back and forth every day between the two. LCC moves up to 5. I had El Camino there, but after El Camino's lost to Torrey Pines, they drop out of the entire top 9 for me. Mission Hills up to 6, Cathedral at 7. Del Norte makes their way into my top 9.
After
I have
that
them at 8.
Performance.
5-1 on the season. They have beat Torrey Pines. They've had a bunch of great wins. Their only loss so far is LCC. And that was a close victory, considering what we've seen LCC do to teams that aren't on their level. I believe it was like 28-13. So they're right there, the Nighthawks. And I have Torrey Pines moving into my top 9. 4 straight wins. They're flying under the radar. Their only losses were to Del Norte and San Clemente.
Which is a great program.
I mean, I did not see this coming from Torrey Pines.
No.
You know, I was like, all right, of all the Avocado teams, like there's so many great ones. They have snuck under the radar almost to the point where I was like, wow, they've won 4 in a row. I mean, incredible what they've been able to do. El Camino and Madison both drop out of my top 9. Seems rough, especially how high I've been on the Wildcats this year. But you have to reward the guy, Del Norte and Torrey Pines, in my opinion. What's your top 9 looking like?
Mine looks very similar, as we were talking before. That's very similar to yours. I go Lincoln, Carlsbad, Granite, Helix, LCC. My top 5 all look the same. I think I even had Mission Hills right about where you had it as well. My thing's the same. Lincoln, for me, it's like Lincoln, Carlsbad are here. Granite and Helix are kind of like, they're almost like tied for 1 and like tied for 2 in my opinion, you know, but you have to list them 1 through 4. So all 4 of those teams I think are incredibly like comparable in my opinion, with Helix and Granite maybe just like a half a step under Lincoln and Carlsbad's caliber. But regardless, when you have those 4 teams that you're talking about, all that have that open division promise, it's just really exciting. And then for me as well, dropping down, I still have El Camino in my top 9 because I just still think that they're an incredible program. They lost to Torrey Pines, but like we mentioned, Torrey Pines is a really great program, and I have Torrey Pines as well in my number 9. Del Norte is like my number 10, so they're right there. They're in the hunt for me. But Torrey Pines, I just think they have done so much with that program. And I did a student athlete earlier this year on Jake Sweeney, and he was just talking about just their hard work and just how they work so hard, and that they're like, hopefully we'll be good enough soon to make it into your guys' top 9. Well, here you are, Jake. You're in our top 9. Torrey Pines made it, so it's just really cool to see. And that program, just such good kids, and they really just work very hard. And so to see them getting this recognition, for us to be able to give them this recognition is really cool, and hopefully they continue to do well the rest of the season. So
something Bo and I have touched on most of this year has been, you know, what's separating Lincoln Carlsbad, if anything, or are we just like 1A, 1B? And then it also goes to that, you know, 3A, 3B when it comes to Helix Granite. Since you're the East County reporter, you've gotten to see Helix and Granite both this past week now. You got to see Helix beat West Hills. What were your biggest takeaway from those 2 teams? Because, you know, we have to make these like, okay, they're 1, they're 2, they're 3, they're 4. But it's really that much closer. I think we're in agreement on that. How are you leaning more towards Granite? In what sense?
I'm trying to think exactly how, because both of those teams, it's hard when you see them, because both of those teams I saw against West Hills and Santana, who of course are good programs, have good records, but they're not at that same division, that same level as like a Granite or Helix. Those are both D1 programs, so they do have that separation. So of course they're going to go out there and be mostly dominant in these performances, you know. So it's hard to be like, oh, they did this one thing like super well, because of course they did when they're against a D4 team kind of thing, you know what I mean? But I just think Granite has just that little bit more of an, I watched Helix, not necessarily mistakes that were being made, but, you know, there were times where things were thrown. It was almost an interception. A guy in West Hills dropped the ball. That happened one time. And on Granite, I didn't really necessarily see that kind of a thing when I was watching. It was pretty just overall like a pretty clean game, I guess is the best way to put it. Helix is pretty perfect too, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
it really comes down to that. And I look at that same way with Lincoln and Carlsbad, where it's like, am I overanalyzing?
Yeah.
You know, where it's like I'm looking for perfection because these teams are so great in their own rights.
Right.
Where it's like, all right, where do I see the weakness? And it almost feels wrong to do that because they're so great.
Right, and you like look, you're like, okay, who's jumping? Who's moving
exactly.
first? Like you start looking at that fine of things because you can't really find anything really wrong with their game plan, the way they're going out there and
100%.
tackling the game. So I guess that's what I was trying to say long-windedly, but honestly, that's kind of what you have to start nitpicking, and they're both, I mean, it really is like a 3A and a half, not even a 3B.
Do you
for
believe
me,
there's
so.
the 1 through 4, obviously open division, you know, it's going to come down to these teams are going to play each other, strength of schedule.
Of course.
But do you think these 4 are like just maybe a step above, maybe not as massive as we say like a Santana or West Hills from the rest of the top 9, but do you think those 4 are the step above the LCCs and the Mission Hillses?
Yes, I do. I think LCC, though, I don't necessarily know if it's like a whole step above
Yeah, they're
either.
creeping up. I'm with you on that. They're creeping up.
They're making their way up there where I'm like, I don't know if Helix played LCC. I mean,
that'd be such a good game.
Right? You think because a lot of these teams, too, they never play each other. So it's so hard to judge. Like, for example, like Lincoln Carlsbad don't play each other this year in the regular season. So we had to judge it based on how each team played Inglewood. Like, hey, is this a good, you know, Carlsbad lost Inglewood, Lincoln beat Inglewood pretty bad, like, or no, Carlsbad didn't lose to Inglewood, but you know what I'm saying. It was a closer game.
Same thing with the Modern Day game, where it was like, you know, I saw Carlsbad put up like I think almost 35 points in the first half. I can't remember, but then I was like, oh, Lincoln gave up 1 touchdown. I was like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? They still blew them out. They still blew them out. Until we see them. I agree though. I think those top 4 are kind of separating themselves.
Yes,
but
I agree.
Now we move on to week 8, as we're slowly starting to get our way to the end of league.
I cannot believe it's week 8. What the heck?
Flying by.
Yes.
But the game of the week this week, you want to talk about 2 teams trying to make a statement. 4-2 El Camino at 5-1 La Costa Canyon. This Avocado League, you can't have slip-ups. El Camino has already had that slip-up.
Yep.
Now they have to go out there and prove it to themselves. I mean, for them to get into the open division, it might be out of reach now because of, you know, if we're being realistic, they probably have to run the table.
Yeah,
in the
just
Avocado.
like we were talking about. Yep.
But, I mean, they're still a phenomenal team. From what I saw, it looked like they came out a little too slow, a little too sloppy, and almost similar to the Del Norte Poway game where Del Norte got out to a lead that was so big, it was like 21 or 23, similar to this game where Poway just couldn't get back into it. That's what I saw in the Torrey Pines. So El Camino needs to come out on fire because we know what LCC can do. High-powered offense behind Quinn Roth at quarterback. LCC, though, might have the hardest schedule remaining from here on out. They play El Camino, then they play at Mission Hills, they play at Carlsbad, and they play against Torrey Pines in the surfboard game.
That is insane.
That is insane. But I mean, if they can, I don't know. It'd be hard for them to run the table, but obviously if they run the table, they're in the open. But I mean, this LCC's looking like they could be like a legit contender for some sort of banner, whether that be open or D1. I mean, we'll have to see from the remainder of the year, but they look good.
They do look really good. I think this is obviously coming up is the true test. I mean, they've already had a test against a lot of good programs, but this is the truest. Like, if you can go out there and beat El Camino, win at Mission Hills, I mean, and then going all the way to winning at Carlsbad, I just think that's a really, really good test of like where your program really is at. But that is a crazy way to end the season. I know it kind of always is like that though, because we get to this end of the season, and you have like, just like we talked about, Helix Granite Hills playing a couple weeks. It gets to those like really exciting games to finish out the season, and sometimes it works out where it's like, hey, it's for something. Sometimes it doesn't. But this year, like this schedule, it's going to be for something.
The Avocado League
awesome.
is gnarly this year, man.
Yes.
But now we will get to the game you will be going to, the El Cajon Ford East County Game of the Week. Grossmont at 6-0 Helix. This is the best chance. I'm not saying it'll happen. let me preface this. Let me say this before Chase Osborne texts me, all right?
Yes.
It's the best chance Grossmont has at winning the Musket. It is. Their offense is great.
100%.
From what we've seen from them, they have been phenomenal. They played another great game against Steel Canyon, which was awesome because the two brothers got to play against each other.
Oh, wasn't that awesome?
That was so
cool.
awesome.
So cool.
But this is the best chance they're going to have. Will they be able to do it? I'm going to say probably not, because Helix is just flying at a different level right now.
I would agree.
This could be, if Helix doesn't come prepared defensively,
yes,
we know what this Grossmont offense can do.
Yeah.
And so it could be a shootout type of game if it gets to that.
100%. And I think also, Grossmont's 4-2. They're sneakily, this is a program who had won one game in 3 seasons, and they're sitting here at 4-2. Agreeing with you, I don't necessarily think they have a chance at beating Helix, but I think that they will do well. You know, there's that difference between going and getting blown out or going and being 35-14, where you put up a good run, a good fight, and I think that it'll be exciting. That musket is growing some dust, so it is their best.
It might be nailed to the wall.
It is nailed to the wall. It is nailed to the wall in the library. I have seen it myself, having dust, but it would be really cool, of course, if that happened for Grossmont. But
it would be massive.
It would be historic. It would be historic. But it's exciting. I think it'll be a fun game. I'm excited. I haven't gotten to go to Helix this year to actually watch Helix and Grossmont go head-to-head in this old school matchup. That's been around for probably almost 100 years or so. Yeah. It'll be awesome. So
and it starts with that mentality, because you come in from Grossmont was at the lowest point, rock bottom last year with that program.
Yes.
To see them be 4-2 is just phenomenal in itself.
Yeah.
So this will be really cool to see. Hopefully they can put up a really good fight. It might not turn out that way, but I would love to see Grossmont put up a good enough fight to be in it.
That's all I want. It's a good, fun game, right?
For those kids, it'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Now we get to the Jersey Mike City game of the week. I think in any other year, this would be the game of the week.
Yeah.
But 2-5 Cathedral Catholic versus 7-0 Lincoln. I love this matchup so much. I loved it when I played. I loved it when I grew up.
I was going to say, is this because you're biased?
I love it now. Because it showcases the best talent in San Diego.
100%.
Always. It showcases the best coaching in San Diego. Always. And these games they're always close. I remember when we were dominant, when we were playing and Lincoln wasn't as dominant, still close games.
Yeah.
And Lincoln's dominant now and Cathedral not so much, even though they're a great team.
Yeah.
It still could be a close game. Maybe not, because Lincoln's just been kind of putting up Alabama score lines on everybody.
Yes.
But, who knows? It could possibly be a closer game than people think. I think Cathedral probably gives them one of their best tests this year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, I've wanted to see someone hang with Lincoln, and it just hasn't happened all year.
I know. No, for sure.
Lincoln has been phenomenal. How do you see, this one kind of going, or more? What do you expect from Lincoln in this?
They of course have been pretty dominant all year, but I think that there comes those. You were mentioning those matchups that you get, and I would have to agree, sometimes there's just those games where you always hang close with that team no matter what. I see it in all sorts of sports. They're sports. You never know what's going to happen if someone's feeling off that day, if someone's hurt, if someone else is just hyped up and having the day of their life and they just go out there and score 6 touchdowns. You just never know what's going on. I expect Lincoln to win and do well as they have, but like you're mentioning, it's always competitive. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Cathedral is able to hang with them at least for a little while. And also Cathedral, they are 2-5, but they also, a lot of those losses were against really hard out-of-town teams.
And they were competitive in most of those games. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I don't think their record shows at all what they're capable of.
Absolutely.
I think they're a lot more powerful than people may give them credit for. They'll be like, oh, Cathedral's 2-5, but I honestly, if they were playing the right teams or different teams, they could easily be 6-1. You know what I'm saying? So I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be fun. I think I would have to pick Lincoln right now, going if I had to, my life depended on it.
It pains me to say it as a Don myself, but I'm picking Lincoln fully in this one.
So we'll see.
I think Lincoln is they are on a mission to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because they already proved everyone wrong last year.
True. They already have done it, but keep doing it, guys. Keep doing it.
They do not stop. They don't care.
Yes.
They want to beat everyone by 35 easily, and I think they're on a mission again. It's gonna be a great matchup, because even we saw last year, Lincoln was flying high all year, and it still came down to Josiah Cox with the pick 6. I think it'll be a little bit more competitive, but I expect Lincoln to win.
Amen.
Now we get on to the North County game of the week. 4-2 Mission Hills at 4-2 Torrey Pines. I liked what I saw from Mission Hills against Carlsbad.
Yeah.
Obviously, second half didn't go their way. Carlsbad made all the right adjustments in the defense.
But they hung.
And now they get a chance to go play Torrey Pines, who is on a roll right now
Yes.
and just got an upset against a team that I honestly thought El Camino can give a lot of people surprises.
Yeah.
This will be a great game. Jake Sweeney, like we talked about,
Yes.
one of the most underrated running backs in this entire county.
I agree.
I think part plays with that was because of his injury, coming back from that last year. But, I mean, he's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. Cade Wilkin has been a disruptor on the defensive side of the ball. 7.5 sacks through 6 games,
Wow.
and a block punt for a touchdown that one play of the week, 1 week. I mean, he's been phenomenal. I love his story, too, getting to talk with that kid. He's a great kid as well.
Yeah.
Torrey Pines is sneaking up on a lot of people, and
Yeah.
this will be one where Mission Hills has to come prepared and come ready because we just saw the recipe. We just saw Torrey Pines get up to an early lead, and their defense was good enough to hold off El Camino to where they beat El Camino. That could happen again if Mission Hills doesn't come prepared. What do you see from these two teams?
Yeah, 100%. When you were talking about Torrey Pines, it's kind of like what I had mentioned earlier on, just the camaraderie of that team. These kids that are kind of maybe underrated, as you say, and they are coming out and they have nothing to lose. You know what I'm saying? The guys like Jake Sweeney coming off of tearing his ACL, MCL, PCL, like got back a month early because he has that drive. And I feel like that team just has that drive like all around, all together. And I think that's why they've been so successful. So they're scary. They're a scary team to play. If anyone was having to play Torrey Pines, I would be scared. But Mission Hills also, like we mentioned, coming into their own. So I think that it could be a really good game. I think this might be the coolest game this week, arguably, because Mission Hills, too, I mean, for a while, I checked someone next to me when I was at the game on Friday, was like, hey, it's 7-7 at the end of the first quarter or whatever. I was like, wow, really? Against Carlsbad? Like, I was not necessarily expecting that. So, I don't know. This is exciting. I'm excited for this one. I don't even know what else to say about it other than, like, it looks like it's going to be a great game, and they have the same record and everything. Like, it's just a cool matchup.
Great matchup for the Avocado. And they're all, like, starting to schedule their way out to where every single week we could have arguably 3 games in the Avocado be North County Game of the Week.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
Now we get to the National City Mile Car South Bay Game of the Week. 3-3 Montgomery at 2-3 Mater Dei Catholic.
Yeah.
Always a great matchup in the South Bay when these two teams play. Mater Dei are starting to come into their own. Obviously, you know, a really bad start to the season, not only losing their games, but kind of getting blown out by the big competition. Huge win against Saints last time out for Mater Dei Catholic. But we get a huge chance to see what sophomore quarterback Andy Deonda can do against Mater Dei. This will be arguably his biggest test of the season.
For sure.
Been great for Montgomery so far this season.
Yes.
They're starting to bounce back after that, you know, kind of bad loss against El Cajon Valley.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still going to favor Mater Dei Catholic in this one. I think they have a big advantage over Montgomery, but don't sleep on Montgomery. I think they're a good enough team.
No, I agree. And Mater Dei, I just always, like, you look at the record, you go 2-3, but I remember last year they started, 0-3 also, right? Something like that. And they went and ran all the way through and won the state championship. So never count them out for sure. And I think that'll be a fun one. Lots of good games this week, Chase. It's so fun.
Probably the funnest game that I'm most looking forward to. It's always fun for us. But we get Saturday night special again, Saturday Night Football on the KUSI.
Already.
Kicking off at 7 p.m. right here on this channel. 2-4 Madison at 2-4 Mira Mesa. I will be reporting on the sideline of Madison. You will be reporting on the sideline of Mira Mesa.
We'll be there firsthand.
I love this opportunity for these kids because I feel like, you know, we've given the opportunity to a lot of teams that, you know, already get a lot of the
100%.
spotlight. And it's not like Madison doesn't get the spotlight, but for Mira Mesa to get this chance to get on live TV, show what they have. Love that for that football program. For myself, I love to see it for Jalen Brown, James Taval, Martell Hughes, Titus Toilolo. They get their chance. It's one thing to see the highlights, but like when somebody, especially on the defensive side of the ball, when they get to see it live, they get to see you fly around and make the plays that don't make the highlights. Yeah,
Never.
It's phenomenal for them. What do you see from Mira Mesa since you'll be on their sideline?
Yeah, I just am excited to see Tyson Line and Chris Brown and Mari Sand, all these guys do their thing because these are both of them really, but Mira Mesa is a team that I've heard about these kids since they were like freshmen, you know, kind of leading this team almost, and to get to watch them and see what they're able to do on the sideline. I mean, Tyson Line putting up incredible numbers this year. He's kind of quietly, or maybe not so quietly, kind of working his way up to being one of the just leading with numbers. So it'll be exciting to watch him, and I know that those guys have played together. Tyson Line and Chris Brown played together for years and years. I think since they were like 10 or 12 years old. So I'm really excited to see the chemistry of that team and kind of how they've grown that program over the past few years firsthand, because it's not very often that I get to see either of these teams really do their thing, but especially Mira Mesa. So it'll be awesome.
I think for Mira Mesa, they'll be so excited to get this opportunity that they have a chance to beat Madison.
Yeah.
But Madison, man, if there's ever a chip on the shoulder, it's the one of losing all these games, not being really competitive in these games. Some of them they were right there for a while, and then they just got blown out later.
Oh, yes.
Madison, I think they're going to come into this with a huge chip on their shoulder of like, all right, it hasn't gone our way so far this season, but this could be the big turnaround where, we get this moment to showcase ourselves on live TV, and then this could, we still have the rest of the Western League to play here, so we could go out there and ball out the rest of the way. Huge game for them, huge game for Mira Mesa. I can't wait.
It's going to be fun. It's a clash for sure.
I can't wait for this one. But
That'll be great.
That'll do it for us on PPR Podcast number 126. Tune in tomorrow for PPR Podcast number 127. Paul and Bert will sit down with, in my opinion, the most terrifying guy on the defensive side of the ball in San Diego, Lincoln linebacker Jerome Roberts. And we saw from the sounds of the game, man, he seems like a character.
He means business.
That'll be
fun.
a great interview. Cannot wait for that one. But that'll do it for me and Allison. We'll see you guys on the PPR.